Hello you lovely Mario Maker person, my name is Ceave and welcome back. Whenever I think I've seen everything there is to see in Mario Maker, I somehow stumble into something which completely blows my mind. So recently a French Mario Maker level creator named Pet Glitch reached out to me and asked me if I want to give his glitch levels a quick look. And so I did. And so my mind was blown once again. Suddenly Mario moved at supersonic speed, walked on top of lava and had to dodge thwomps, which behaved really strange. In short, Pet Glitch had tons of levels showcasing glitches, which I had never seen before. Today we're going to take a closer look on 7 of these crazy glitches and we'll discuss how to recreate them. So you ready? Let's do this! Okay, so let's start with the first glitch. I like to refer to this glitch as the Supersonic WAMP glitch. In case you're wondering why, here's why. Here we have a bullet blaster on top of a thwomp which moves incredibly fast to the right and pushes Mario with him. What's even more interesting about this glitch is that Mario is actually still able to control his vertical height somewhat by changing the direction in which he looks. But there is even more to this glitch. The Supersonic WAMP moves so fast that it has no troubles to push our ex-plumber through bouncy obstacles like bouncers. And there should be tons of other crazy shenanigans possible because of this little trick. So how does this work? It's actually surprisingly simple. The thwomp is placed on top of 2 coins, then there is a coin row to its right and one-way doors on top of it. Once a P-switch is triggered, the thwomp is on top of the brick blocks and desperately tries to move to the right in order to leave the brick blocks. But to its right are even more brick blocks, and so our poor thwomp starts to run to the right as fast as he can, hopelessly searching for a non-brick blocked spot. Everything which is on top of the left side of the thwomp is carried with him at supersonic speed during this procedure. Okay, so the Supersonic WAMP was a really fast start into this video. It's probably better to take it a little bit slower now. In fact, we probably should go in slow motion, because one of Pet Glitch's fantastic stages showcases the slowest slow motion contraption I've ever seen in Super Mario Maker. So here our no plumber no more has to make it through a small and not dangerous area as fast as he can, which is honestly not very fast. I haven't tinkered with the footage, that's the actual speed in which this level runs, but not only the frame rate is heavily reduced, there are also 3 Bowsers at the bottom of the screen which try to grab our attention. Maybe they desperately try to warn us that using such a glitch might get all your stars wiped, but maybe they just bounce on top of note blocks, we don't know. But what we do know is how to recreate this trick. The reason this works is because of a very clever way to bounce tons of note blocks at the same time, which circumvents the enemy entity limit. Bouncing note blocks seem to take a lot of procedural power. Usually things that take a lot of procedural power are limited to 100 per screen, but that's not true for note blocks. But note blocks can not only be bounced by enemies, but by power-ups as well. Power-ups have a different entity limit than enemies, and because of this we can lag the game. Such contraptions are in general a lot of fun to toy around with, but they're actually really useful for learning Casso tricks. Here we have a similar setup which slows the game down as well, but not as much. Since the frame rate is a little bit slower than usual, it is way easier to practice the timing for Casso tricks like mid-air spring jumps. Okay, so here we have a thwomp, but this thwomp is no ordinary thwomp, because this thwomp doesn't drop down in a straight line once the game starts. Instead, he does this. When I first saw this thwomp in one of Pet Glitch's levels, I thought this has to be the craziest glitch ever. But when I started to toy around with it in order to understand how it works, I found out that it's even crazier, because this is actually intended behavior of the game. So what happens here? It's actually surprisingly simple. At the bottom is a Spiny who carries a bullet blaster. On top of the bullet blaster lives a thwomp. The bullet blaster can't be loaded since it is blocked by ground tiles. If an entity is part of an enemy tower and isn't loaded or disappears, the next enemy on top drops on top of the first enemy at the bottom. In this case, the thwomp drops on top of the Spiny, but the Spiny moves on top of conveyor belts to the right, so the thwomp has to move horizontally as well. But thwomps still can't pass through ground tiles, and so the thwomp jumps to this position. It's easier to understand what's going on here if we use a boo instead of a thwomp. The boo is transported to the top of the Spiny as soon as the game starts. The the really cool thing about this trick is that this works with all enemies and entities that can be stacked on top of each other, so there is definitely some potential for crazy contraptions or puzzle levels here. Okay, but now it's time for something serious. As most of you probably know, I do not allow Hammer Bros to appear in my videos usually, but there is this one fantastic glitch level by Biped Glitch where their full potential is finally shown. A really cool trick which only works with our hammer swinging bros. So I argued with myself for a long time whether I should show you this trick and decided to give our mad hammer swingers one chance for once. So I proudly present the most useful Sledge Bro I've ever seen. Next up, let's glitch some wigglers. If a pow block and a wiggler are at the same position, something weird happens. The wiggler is so annoyed by the pow block in front of him that he decides to ignore gravity. Their hitbox is still intact and this allows us to create some interesting bouncy platforms. But there is even more possible. I toyed around with this trick for a little bit and it's actually possible to do the same with big wigglers and to build a contraption which pushes the wiggler through the ceiling in periodic intervals, which allows us to create tricky timing challenges for expert jump and runner. But that's not the only way. Wigglers can be glitched for some really weird reason, and I have no idea how this is still in the game after 2 years. Big wigglers on conveyor belts start to float if they are entrapped. Here we use this to create a horrific living bridge on which Mario can bounce around. Next, let's take a look at a really clever way to push Mario inside walls. Here we have a clown car inside of semi-solid platforms, which look at each other. If Mario enters this contraption from below and then starts to drive the clown car, he will find himself inside a wall as soon as he decides to end his little ride. The reason why this happens is because of the one-way doors. Our plumber can't move to the right nor to the left once he leaves the clown car, so the only way to move for him is inside the wall, because that is how physics work in the Mushroom Kingdom. Okay, before we head to my favorite glitch, just a quick side note. I'm really just scratching the surface with the glitches shown in this video, and I highly recommend everyone to check Biped Glitch's fantastic stages out. You can find the IDs to his levels in the description. He just recently uploaded a huge glitch showcasing level, and there is so much more to discover in his stages that I can't possibly showcase everything in a single video. Okay, so now let's take a look at the craziest glitch. Mario finds himself in the middle of a castle which Bowser built. To his right are bullet blasters which seem to float inside the lava and create a pathway for not a plumber. And then things become really weird. Once Mario enters the next room, these Thwomps are pushed into the lethal lava and disappear. But how is Mario now supposed to reach the end? Well, the answer is really simple. He just needs to walk on top of the lava. Hooray! We are going to do something even more crazy with this concept in a second. But first, let's take a look at how this actually works. It's actually Well, to be honest, actually, I'm not entirely sure why this works. But I do have a theory. These fire bars push the Thwomps down. Usually a Thwomp is unloaded once he's outside of the screen, but I believe what happens here is that the fire bar is unloaded before the Thwomp is so low that the game removes him. Because of this, the Thwomp and everything which is on top of him floats in the air. Here the bullet blasters are at exactly the same position as the lava, which creates an almost invisible pathway for Mario over the really hot liquid. The reason why I believe that it has something to do with the lower loading border of the camera is because this happens if the camera is higher. Here the camera is 2 blocks higher than before, which makes the bullet blasters float 2 blocks higher in the air than before. The reason why I want to point out that this is probably a loading issue is because if it is, this should mean that this trick does not only work with lava, but with every lower game border in every style. And as it turns out, yep. Here, Mario is allowed to stand on top of cannons, which are invisible. Here, Mario is able to use springs, which really shouldn't be there. Here, he ground pounds into his doom, but still survives because he's still above the loser life border. And here are bullet blasters only half on screen. That's kinda interesting, isn't it? This is what the setup for this trick looks like, in case any one of you wants to toy around with it. I'm sure there is something completely crazy possible with it. Okay, so that's basically it, but before we end this little video, we have to reveal last week's magic trick, and I've got a new trick for you. So last week we took a look at this small traffic light contraption. If our no plumber no more enters this contraption while the block is in front of the red semi-solid, he drops to his doom. But if he enters it while the block is in front of the green light, nothing happens and he's allowed to run around here as much as he desires. So many of you lovely people guessed that there is a Thwomp on tracks up there, which would totally work and is really close to the solution, but not exactly how it's done. Up there is a Buzzy Beetle. Buzzy Beetles move at almost the exact same speed as items on tracks, and because of this the beetle only triggers the contraption if Mario enters when the block is in front of the red platform, and deactivates it when he's in front of the green one. The reason why I used a Buzzy Beetle here is because I thought the Thwomp dropping down would give the trick away a little bit too easily, but using a Thwomp here is actually the cleaner solution. Okay, and since we talked about glitches today, this week's trick is a super simple question. Why is this sad little Goomba shoe entrapped in a wall, and how is it possible to do this? I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and maybe you feel especially glitched today and want to hit the subscribe button as well. I hope that you have a wonderful day and to see you soon. Goodbye!